Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm the last one on our side that gets to go, so I'm going to ask probably the most important question of the day. We passed $25 billion from the U.S. House of Representatives yesterday, and if you don't get that money that we passed on Saturday, will the post office be fully operational on November 3rd?
Yes, we'll be fully operational.
Thank you. I sat right there in that chair in April 2019, the last time that we had a hearing on the post office and postal reforms, and we listened for a day as we heard about the systemic problems, all of the consequences, the years long of losing money, and all the strategic disadvantages that exist in the post office. And something happened. The witness in your seat at that time managed to do something which is unique in this committee. And she drew equal opportunity criticism from both sides of the aisle. Now, just to be clear, you weren't the Postmaster General in April 2019.
No, I was not.
I was on a telephone briefing in April of 2020 when we heard about the impacts of COVID, from overtime to your postal workers contracting to the disease, and where the Democrats of this committee absolutely said that we needed $25 billion or the postal office wouldn't exist. And I do want to say I'm sorry for the 83 people who have died and all the people in your organization that have been sick. I didn't agree with it then, and I don't agree with it now, but to be clear, you weren't the Postmaster General in April of 2019, were you?
No, sir, I wasn't.
I'd ask unanimous consent to submit the memorandum from April of 2019, or 2000.
Without objection.
So then we got to ask what this is about. And what it's about is driving fear, placing blame, and probably most significantly raising money. But it's not about raising money for the post office, it's about raising money for elections. And I have here DCCC, DNC, members of Congress, members of Senate, all running ads on the post office. You know what? About saving the post office. None of these ran in 2019. None of these ran in April 2020. So we're asking for the same thing we asked for in April of 2020, and we've waited until August to run these things. In fact, your organization had to issue a cease and desist to MoveOn.org, did they not?
I'm not aware. I think I heard something about that.
I'm going to ask unanimous consent to issue the post office record on a cease and desist of MoveOn.org.
Without objection.
I love your organization. I love your carriers. I love your rural carriers. I was the only Republican on this committee to co-sponsor the pre-funding bill on the pension bill. Best thing I've heard you say all day is you're committed to 6-day mail. Because maybe one of the reasons we're not as disproportionately impacted in North Dakota is because we've been going through this for a long time. So that's the best thing I have heard all day long. But I do have a couple questions, and you have talked about making sure the elections and doing all of that. But some of this is based on, I mean, you're talking about votes as they come in throughout the system, right? So North Dakota, 23% of their votes is typically absentee ballot. Ohio, pretty important states, 21% of their ballots is typically absentee. Wisconsin, 28%. Now, I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that those numbers get to 60% this election cycle. Would you agree with that?
They're going to be a great deal higher.
But you cannot deliver a ballot unless it's requested. If a voter doesn't request it, the post office can't send it.
That's true, but in places where I don't know the particular state rules, but they're...
And that's what I'm getting to. And so if the ballots track throughout the course of this in their normal theory or rate, that works. But Wisconsin doesn't require you to request a ballot until October 29th, and they're required to be due back on 11/3. On 11/3, the difference between 28% and 60% is about 2.9 million ballots. Ohio, the difference between 21% and 60% is about 2.1 million ballots. And they don't require you to request one until October 31st, and it's due back on the 2nd. North Dakota, my state, who got one of these letters, doesn't require you to postmark your ballot until the 11/2 for the election. And the difference between 23% and 60% would be 126,327 ballots. So my question for you is, how are we going to how do you possibly deal with different capacity issues as it exists there?
Sir, the capacity to handle is not really going to be the issue. The issue is going to be as, with the dates that you identified, as we get closer, we could have, we've had situations where when the ballots come in on the same day, the turnaround time is so slow that we need to really scour and look amongst all the other 450 million pieces of mail, find ballots and make sure they get delivered and postmarked. And the problem comes in once we do that, we get it over to the state election boards, and it's what they decide to do with the timing and everything with the ballot that is whether the ballot gets counted or not.
And then I just have one last question that actually doesn't relate to elections or anything, but you have seen an increase in packages volume at the UPS, or at the United Postal Service since the pandemic began. And we've seen the decrease in first-class mail over the course of time. Our law firm went for $30,000 a year to zero. But is there are you looking into, because you're making more of a profit on packages, that you may be prioritizing packages versus first-class mail?
There's no, there's a lot of judgment used in each location, and one of the things I'm trying to get my hands around, and, but the general intent is what comes in, comes out according to its class, right? So if it's a first-class package, it would move, ahead. So there's no specific direction to do anything. And I appreciate your support on the 6-day-a-week delivery. I think there are many, many ideas we're working internally right now to help really connect with the American people in the new economy and grow some revenue and achieve sustainability. So thank you.
Thank you. And
The gentleman's time has expired.